Governor Elena Santos stared at the holographic message floating above her desk, its pale blue light casting harsh shadows across her office in New Haven's Colonial Administration Building. The Nexer ultimatum pulsed steadily, each word precise and unambiguous. Submit to Dominion authority within 48 standard hours, or face immediate military intervention. She ran her fingers through her silver-streaked hair, the gesture unconscious as her mind raced through options that seemed to narrow with each passing moment. Outside her window, the colony's capital sprawled beneath twin moons, its gleaming towers and bustling streets home to over 3 million souls who had no idea their world stood on the brink. "They're not even trying to negotiate," Marcus Chen, her chief of security, observed from where he stood by the window. His reflection showed the same tension that had kept them all working through the night, just demands and threats. "The Nexer don't negotiate with what they consider lesser species," Elena replied, her voice tight. "And humanity's late arrival to faster-than-light travel makes us particularly lesser in their eyes." The door chimed, admitting Admiral James Harrison, his typically pristine uniform showing signs of a long night, in the colony's modest defense command center. "The Dominion fleet has moved closer," he reported without preamble. 17 capital ships, at least 30 support vessels. "They're making sure we can see them." Elena nodded slowly. The Nexar weren't subtle. Their preferred approach was overwhelming force followed by complete subjugation. Dozens of species had fallen to this pattern over the centuries, their cultures and autonomy methodically stripped away until they were nothing more than client races serving Dominion interests. "What's Earth's response?" Marcus asked. "Still waiting," Elena answered, though she knew Earth's options were limited. New Haven lay at the edge of explored space, too far for meaningful military support to arrive in time. The colony's defense fleet, while modern, consisted of only 5 ships. They wouldn't last an hour against the Dominion Armada. "The Nexer are transmitting again," her AI assistant announced. A new hologram materialized, showing the distinctive angular features of High Commander Vixtal. The Nexer's scaled skin gleamed with ceremonial oils, his multiple eyes fixed on some point just above the camera. "Governor Santos," the alien's voice resonated with artificial warmth. "I trust you have considered our generous offer. The Dominion brings order, stability, and protection to all who accept its embrace. Your colony's resources and strategic location make it valuable. We would hate to see such potential squandered through misguided resistance." Elena straightened in her chair, meeting those alien eyes. "High Commander, New Haven is a sovereign human colony, established through legal channels and recognized by the Galactic Conclave. We have no desire for conflict, but we cannot simply surrender our autonomy." Vixtal's secondary eyes narrowed slightly. "Your species' obsession with independence is quaint, but ultimately irrelevant. The Dominion's authority is absolute. Accept this truth, and your transition will be smooth. Resist, and we will still prevail, though the cost will be significantly higher." "Is that a threat, Commander?" "Merely reality, Governor. You have 36 hours remaining. Choose wisely." The transmission cut. Elena stood, walking to the window where Marcus still stood. New Haven's lights twinkled below, its people going about their lives, unaware of the shadow looming over them. She had been appointed to protect them, to help this colony grow and prosper. Now she faced an impossible choice between submission and devastation. "Admiral," she said finally, "begin evacuating non-essential personnel. Quietly. Use the mining shuttles if you have to. I want as many civilians as possible away from potential military targets." "And the Nexer ultimatum?" Marcus asked. Elena's reflection showed a hard smile. "Contact Earth. Tell them New Haven requests immediate diplomatic and military support against Nexer aggression. Then get me everything we have on Dominion fleet tactics and weaknesses. If they want this colony, they're going to learn that humans don't ask for permission to exist." The next 36 hours passed in a blur of activity. While civilians were quietly moved to secure locations, Alina and her team worked tirelessly, coordinating with Earth's military command and preparing for what seemed like an impossible defense. The colony's 5 ships were supplemented by automated drone platforms. Planetary defense batteries were charged and calibrated, and emergency protocols were put in place. More importantly, Alina had authorized the deployment of Project Echo, an experimental defense system that the colony's scientists had been developing in secret. It wasn't tested, wasn't even supposed to be operational for another year. But they were out of options and out of time. As the deadline approached, Alina stood in the Colonial Defense Center, watching as the Nexer fleet moved into attack position. The High Commander's final message played without response. "Your silence is disappointing, but not unexpected. Prepare for pacification." Alina looked at her team, Marcus, Admiral Harrison, and dozens of others who had chosen to stand their ground. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Let's show the Dominion why humanity doesn't ask for permission." High above New Haven, Project Echo activated, its network of quantum-entangled satellites beginning a cascade that would change the course of human-Nexer relations forever. The price of sovereignty was about to be paid in full. Project Echo's activation sent no visible signal, no dramatic flash of energy or thunderous roar. Instead, quantum entanglement cascaded through New Haven's orbital defense grid in perfect silence. The Nexer fleet's first warning came as their targeting systems suddenly went dark, shield harmonics fluctuating wildly as Echo's quantum interference patterns took hold. High Commander Vixtel's bridge erupted in chaos as system after system reported failures. "Impossible," he snarled, multiple eyes blinking in rapid succession. "Their technology is primitive. They cannot." Multiple targets emerging from the colony's surface, his tactical officer interrupted. "Energy signatures unlike anything in our database." The Colonial Defense Center hummed with controlled tension as Alina watched the first phase of their counterattack unfold. Project Echo had been theoretical, a way to exploit quantum entanglement to disrupt advanced energy systems. The Nexer's sophisticated technology made them particularly vulnerable, their reliance on quantum-based targeting and shields working against them. "Launch the drones," Admiral Harrison commanded. Across New Haven's surface, hidden silos opened, releasing swarms of autonomous fighters. Unlike traditional military drones, these were equipped with echo-enhanced systems, allowing them to operate even within the quantum disruption field. Marcus Chen monitored the tactical display as hundreds of small craft emerged, forming attack patterns that the Nexer's compromised systems struggled to track. "They're blind and deaf up there," he reported, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "Echo is working better than we hoped." The Nexer fleet's response was predictable, overwhelming force. Energy weapons blazed across space, but without precise targeting. Most shots went wide. The few that found targets discovered another surprise. The drones were equipped with experimental metamaterial hulls that absorbed and redirected energy. "Send the signal to Earth," Alina ordered. "The window won't stay open long." As the battle raged in orbit, New Haven's quantum communications array powered up, using the same entanglement principles that powered Project Echo to achieve instantaneous communication across light years. Earth needed to know that the colony's gambit had worked, and that the time to strike was now. On the Nexer flagship, Vixtel watched in mounting fury as his superior force was systematically neutralized by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. "Launch ground forces," he commanded. "If we cannot break them from orbit, we will crush them on the surface." But even this traditional show of dominion might met with unexpected resistance. As Nexer dropships descended through New Haven's atmosphere, they encountered layers of quantum disruption fields that played havoc with their navigation systems. Those that made it through found their landing zones transformed into killing grounds by pre-positioned defense systems. "They're adapting," Marcus warned, watching as the Nexer fleet began attempting to brute force their way through Echo's interference. "The quantum disruption won't hold them forever." Alina nodded. They had known this would be a temporary advantage. "It doesn't need to. We just need to hold until." The tactical display suddenly lit up with new signatures as space itself seemed to tear open at multiple points around the Nexar fleet. Earth's response had arrived, not in the form of conventional warships, but as something entirely new. Quantum tunnels, artificial wormholes created using principles similar to Project Echo, deposited specially designed strike craft directly into the heart of the Nexar formation. These ships, smaller than traditional capital vessels but bristling with Echo-derived weapons, began their attack runs before the Dominion forces could react. "Earth's been busy," Admiral Harrison observed, watching as the new vessels demonstrated capabilities that went far beyond anything humanity had previously revealed. The Nexar aren't the only ones who can keep secrets. The battle shifted decisively as the Nexar found themselves caught between New Haven's swarm of drones and Earth's quantum strike craft. Their technological superiority, long taken for granted, had become a liability against enemies who had learned to turn it against them. High Commander Vixtal watched his tactical display dissolve into chaos as more quantum tunnels opened, disgorging additional Earth forces. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," he ordered, his pride bitter ash in his mouth. "The Dominion will not forget this insult." "Let them remember," Alina said softly, watching as the Nexar fleet began a ragged retreat. "Let them remember that humanity doesn't bow to demands or bend to threats. Let them remember that we forge our own path." As the last Nexar ships fled through conventional FTL, leaving their damaged vessels and failed invasion force behind, New Haven began to assess the cost of their victory. The colony had survived, but more importantly, they had demonstrated that humanity's apparent technological gap had been carefully crafted misdirection. In her office later that night, Alina received a priority transmission from Earth Command. The message was brief but clear. New Haven's defense had been the signal to launch a coordinated campaign across multiple sectors. The Nexar would soon discover that this defeat was not an isolated incident, but the beginning of a fundamental shift in the balance of power. "They never asked if we wanted to join their dominion," Marcus said, reading the reports of similar quantum tunnels opening near other Nexar-controlled systems. "Never considered that we might have plans of our own." Alina watched the twin moons rise over her colony, their light shining on a city that stood unbowed. "That's their weakness," she replied. "They're so convinced of their superiority that they never stop to question it. But humanity, we question everything. And then we find answers they never saw coming." The Nexar Central Command Chamber on Dominion Prime fell silent as reports from across their territory continued to stream in. High Commander Vixtal stood before the Council of Overseers, his scales dulled with fatigue and his pride still stinging from the defeat at New Haven. "They were ready for us," he reported, each word carefully measured. "Not just at the colony, but everywhere. The humans have deployed their quantum disruption technology across multiple sectors, targeting our key strategic positions." Supreme Overseer Caxtil leaned forward, his ancient scales reflecting the dim light. "How is this possible? Their species barely achieved faster than light travel within the last century." "Deception," another Overseer hissed. "They have hidden their true capabilities, waiting for this moment." In the 3 weeks since the New Haven incident, humanity had launched what they called Operation Stormbreak, a coordinated campaign that targeted Nexar control systems across dozens of worlds. The quantum tunnels appeared without warning, delivering strike teams and Echo-enabled devices that systematically dismantled Dominion authority. Aboard the Earth Fleet flagship Defiance, Admiral Sarah Chen watched holographic displays track the campaign's progress. Colored indicators showed human forces emerging from quantum tunnels across Nexar space, striking with surgical precision before vanishing again. "The Dominion's responding exactly as predicted," her tactical officer reported. "They're consolidating their forces around their core worlds, leaving their frontier territories exposed." Chen nodded, studying the movement patterns. The Nexar, accustomed to being the undisputed technological superior, had no doctrine for fighting an enemy that could appear anywhere, neutralize their advanced systems, and disappear before an effective response could be mounted. Status of Phase 3. she asked. Ready to implement. The quantum network is fully operational. We can trigger the cascade whenever you give the word. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Nexer still didn't understand what they were truly facing. Project Echo wasn't just a weapon. It was a key that humanity had designed to unlock the very foundations of Dominion power. On a dozen formerly Nexer-controlled worlds, subjugated species watched in amazement as their oppressors' mighty ships fell dark, their weapon systems failed, and their supposedly impregnable fortresses crumbled. More importantly, they watched as human forces arrived not to conquer, but to liberate. We don't seek to replace the Dominion's authority with our own, Alina Santos explained to a gathering of alien representatives on New Haven. We're here to break chains, not forge new ones. The delegates, many seeing their first glimpse of freedom in generations, listened intently as she outlined humanity's true goal. The quantum tunnels, echo technology, and the entire military campaign were meant to create something unprecedented. A genuine alliance of equals. Back on Dominion Prime, the Nexer's worst fears were realized as Phase 3 began. The quantum cascade rippled through their networks, not to destroy but to reveal. On every Nexer world, in every Dominion facility, hidden archives were suddenly exposed. Centuries of manipulation. Marcus Chen explained to the gathered media, as humanity released proof of how the Nexer had systematically stunted the technological development of other species. They didn't achieve their dominance through natural advancement. They actively prevented others from reaching their potential. The evidence was damning. The Nexer had posed as benevolent overlords while secretly sabotaging their client races, ensuring none could ever challenge their authority. Now those same races watched as humanity demonstrated just how vulnerable the mighty Dominion truly was. Admiral Chen's quantum tunnels continued to appear and disappear across space, each strike precisely calculated. The Nexer found themselves fighting shadows, unable to predict where the next attack would come from or protect their increasingly fragile hold on power. They still don't understand, Alina observed, watching reports of another successful operation. They keep trying to fight this like a traditional war. That's because they've never faced an enemy who planned like we did, Marcus replied, who spent decades appearing weak while building exactly the tools needed to break their power. The quantum cascade had reached its peak. Across Nexer space, their mighty fleets found themselves reduced to drifting metal as echo technology systematically disabled their most advanced systems. But humanity didn't press this advantage toward conquest. Instead, Earth's diplomats arrived with offers of partnership and restored independence. The age of the Dominion is over, humanity announced to the galaxy. Not because we defeated them through superior force, but because we exposed the truth of their power. We offer something different, a future where each species determines its own path. Supreme Overseer Caxtil surveyed the ruins of his empire with all four eyes, watching as former slave races rose up with human assistance. The Nexer had ruled through assumed superiority and carefully maintained dominance. Now they faced an enemy that had turned their own arrogance into a weapon. Perhaps, he mused to his silent council, we should have asked them if they wished to join us, rather than assuming they would submit. The response came not from his advisors, but from a quantum transmission that penetrated their supposedly secure chamber. Alina Santos's voice filled the room, clear and unwavering. You never asked because you never saw us as equals. That was your mistake. Humanity doesn't ask for permission. We forge our own destiny. And now we're helping others forge theirs. The garden world of K-Full Prime blazed with new energy as representatives from 20 formerly subjugated species gathered in its ancient assembly hall. The Nexer had used this chamber for centuries to issue edicts to their client races. Now these same races came together not as servants, but as equals. Ambassador Maya Rodriguez stood before the assembled delegates, her presence a stark contrast to the towering Nexer overseers who once dominated these proceedings. Earth extends its hand in partnership, she declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Not as conquerors or masters, but as allies in a new age of cooperation. The gathering included species that had suffered under Dominion rule for generations. The crystalline Araxians, whose natural quantum sensitivity had been suppressed by Nexar technology. The biomechanical Valkyr, whose evolution had been artificially stunted. The ethereal Xin, whose natural telepathic abilities had been dampened through carefully designed protective measures. The humans didn't just break the Nexar's power, Kithal Elder Shenre observed, her bioluminescent patterns shifting with excitement. They showed us that resistance was possible, that technological superiority could be overcome through innovation and determination. In orbit above the planet, Admiral Chen watched from the Defiance as more ships arrived through conventional space. Not quantum tunnels this time. Humanity had made that technology available to their new allies, but many preferred to demonstrate their independence through traditional means. The Nexar are still trying to maintain control in their core systems, her tactical officer reported. But without their client race's resources and labor, their empire is crumbling faster than anyone predicted. Chen nodded, studying the tactical displays. The Dominion's carefully constructed hierarchy had been built on preventing cooperation between subjugated species. Now, with those barriers broken, centuries of suppressed advancement were being unleashed. Back in the assembly hall, Maya watched as species that had been intentionally kept apart by Nexar policy began sharing knowledge and technology. The Araxians' quantum insights combined with Valkyr biomechanical expertise, Xin telepathic theory merged with human quantum tunneling principles. They kept us divided because they feared this moment, a Valkyr representative observed, his cybernetic components gleaming. When we would realize that together, we could surpass them. The evidence humanity had exposed through the quantum cascade told a damning story. The Nexar hadn't just conquered through military might. They had systematically identified and suppressed any technological or cultural developments that might challenge their authority. But humans were different. Elder Shenra noted during a private session. You hid your advancement, appearing less capable than you were. Why? Maya smiled. Because we studied history. Every species that openly challenged Nexar dominance was crushed. So we played a longer game. We appeared primitive while developing exactly the tools needed to break their power. The assembly chamber's displays showed real-time updates as more worlds declared independence from Nexar control. The Dominion's attempt to maintain authority through military force was failing as their former servants turned their own technology against them. They never understood that true power doesn't come from forcing others to submit. Maya explained to the gathered delegates. It comes from working together, from combining our strengths and overcoming our weaknesses through cooperation. The Araxians had already begun enhancing Project Echo's capabilities through their natural quantum attunement. The Valkyr were developing new applications for human tunneling technology. The Xin's telepathic insights were revolutionizing quantum communications. This is what the Nexar feared. A Xin elder observed, her ethereal form shimming with emotion. Not just defeat, but irrelevance. They knew that if we ever truly worked together, we would surpass them in ways they couldn't match. In her private quarters that evening, Maya reviewed reports from across former Nexar space. Species that had been deliberately kept technologically primitive were rapidly advancing, sharing knowledge and resources in ways the Dominion had worked for centuries to prevent. The quantum cascade didn't just expose their lies, she recorded in her log. It showed everyone that the Nexar's superiority was an illusion maintained through careful suppression of others. Once that illusion broke, their power began to crumble. Admiral Chen's voice came through on a priority channel. The Nexar have requested a formal meeting, not just with Earth, but with representatives from all their former client races. Maya's expression hardened slightly. They still don't understand. This isn't about negotiating a new power structure. It's about fundamental change. Agreed, Chen replied. But I think they're beginning to realize they don't have a choice. Their empire was built on preventing exactly what's happening now. Genuine cooperation between species they dominated. They can adapt to the new reality, or they can fade into irrelevance. As the assembly session resumed, Maya watched the former client races working together, sharing ideas and technologies that the Nexar had suppressed for generations. Humanity hadn't just broken chains. They had shown the galaxy a new way forward. The art of defiance, she mused to Elder Shenra, isn't just about resisting authority. It's about proving there's a better path, one that we can only walk together. The Galactic Conclave's central chamber on New Terra bore little resemblance to the austere halls where the Nexar had once dictated terms to their subjects. Sunlight streamed through crystalline windows, a deliberate choice to symbolize the transparency of this new era. Representatives from dozens of species filled the circular chamber, their voices blending in animated discussion. Governor Elena Santos, now Earth's senior ambassador to the Conclave, stood at the speaker's podium. 5 years had passed since New Haven's defiance sparked a revolution that transformed known space. The Nexar delegation sat in a modest section, their once elaborate regalia replaced by simpler attire. "We gather today not to celebrate victory," Elena began, her voice carrying the weight of experience, "but to mark a transformation. The galaxy is entering an unprecedented age of cooperation and advancement." The evidence surrounded them. Araxian quantum technologies merged seamlessly with Valkyr biomechanical systems throughout the chamber. Zin telepathic enhancers facilitated instant translation between species. Humanity's quantum tunneling networks had transformed interstellar travel and commerce. High Commander Vixtal, now serving as the Nexar's chief diplomatic representative, watched with all 4 eyes as Elena outlined the Conclave's latest initiatives. His species had finally accepted a humbling truth. True power came not from dominance, but from collaboration. "The Nexar taught us an invaluable lesson," Elena continued, her gaze sweeping the chamber. "They showed us that suppressing others ultimately limits everyone's potential. Real progress comes from lifting each other up, from combining our unique perspectives and abilities." Admiral Chen, seated with Earth's military delegation, studied the tactical displays that monitored traffic through the quantum tunnel network. Ships from every species moved freely between systems that had once been strictly controlled. The Nexar's former empire had transformed into a thriving cooperative of independent worlds. "The humans didn't just defeat us," Vixtal admitted during his address to the Conclave. "They showed us a better way. We spent centuries maintaining power through division and suppression. They proved that unity and cooperation create something far stronger." The transformation hadn't been entirely smooth. Some Nexar hardliners had resisted change, attempting to maintain their dominance through military force. But without their network of subjugated worlds to draw resources from, these holdouts found themselves facing not just humanity, but a united front of formerly oppressed species. The quantum cascade didn't just expose their secrets. Marcus Chen, now director of interspecies security, explained to a group of young diplomats. It showed everyone that progress comes through sharing knowledge, not hoarding it. When we combine our strengths, we all advance faster. The proof was undeniable. In just 5 years, cooperative research had produced technologies that surpassed anything the Nexar had achieved through centuries of controlled development. The Valkyr's biomechanical insights enhanced quantum tunneling efficiency. Araxian crystal matrices revolutionized data storage. Zin telepathic principles transformed communication. "We never sought to rule," Elena reminded the assembly. Humanity's goal was to prove that everyone deserves the right to forge their own path. That true strength comes not from forcing others to submit, but from choosing to work together. As she spoke, new reports arrived from distant sectors. Another group of independent worlds had applied to join the Conclave. Former client races of the Nexar were developing their own unique solutions to age-old problems, sharing insights that benefited everyone. "The art of defiance taught us wisdom," a Zin elder observed during the closing ceremonies. "But humans taught us something more valuable: the power of choosing cooperation over submission." High Commander Vixtal approached Elena after the session concluded. "We were wrong about your species," he admitted, his once proud posture more measured. We saw your late arrival to the galactic stage as weakness. We never considered it might be patience." Elena smiled. "The greatest power doesn't come from forcing others to accept your path. It comes from showing them a better one and letting them choose to follow it." As the day drew to a close, Elena stood at the chamber's observation deck, watching ships from dozens of species moving through the quantum tunnel apertures that dotted near space. Each vessel represented a choice: to trade, to learn, to cooperate. "We didn't just break their empire," Admiral Chen said, joining her at the window. "We replaced it with something better. Something that grows stronger through freedom rather than control." "That was always the goal," Elena replied. "Not to tear down, but to build up. To show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our determination. It's our ability to work together, to forge new paths where others saw only walls." The twin suns of New Terra set, their light refracting through the crystalline windows in a spectrum of colors. Below, representatives from formerly hostile species shared ideas and resources freely. The Nexer's dream of absolute dominion had been replaced by something far more powerful: genuine cooperation between equals. "Dawn's promise," Elena mused, watching the stars emerge. "Not just for humanity, but for everyone who dares to forge their own path."